Okay, my own experiences. January 2, 1977, Boise, Idaho. Lots of snow, lots of ice, dead of winter. The first experience was caused by a miscarriage and extreme hemorrhaging. The second one, 2 days later, was caused by a major thrombosis in the right thigh vein, which dislodged, followed by the worst case of phlebitis the specialist had ever heard of, let alone seen. And the third one was March 29, and they still today are not sure what killed me. Maybe a heart attack, they're not sure. All they know is there was no vital signs. I had a near-death experience with each one. Each near-death experience was different. The first one was rather quick, didn't take that long, really. Primarily an out-of-body experience, but it also involved seeing blobs in the air. Didn't know what they were, and I didn't like them. The second one was very long and complex. Started with a out-of-body experience also. Involved going into the void, an experience in creation, in the void, and going on to where I met my loved ones who died and gone on before me, including a grandfather I had never met, did not know his name, never saw a picture of him. That's because I was born illegitimately. In those days, I was called a bastard child, and my mother was shunned. Yeah, that was a big deal in the 30s. And so I had no way to know anything about this man. And he came up and introduced himself to me and said he was my grandfather. And I recognized a number of my traits from him, and I thought, ooh. And then I was also met by Jesus. Not any sense of worshiping him, but rather being greeted by my elder brother. And the sense of a reunion with my elder brother. So there was a lot of laughter, there was a lot of hugging, there was a lot of happy talk. You know, no big pronouncement, but rather happiness and joy, a lot of joy. And then my life review, and then a period of forgiveness and floating back into my body on a carpet of sparklers. My third near-death experience, also long and complex, also began with an out-of-body experience. With this one, I left planet Earth way out into the night sky. Planet Earth was like a little marble, and saw a lip of light. It was shaped like a lip, and it was a light, sort of like a crack in the sky or the universe, and got near it, and I was sucked in like a force field. And what I saw inside, and I talk a lot about this in Future Memory, what I saw inside, it wasn't a light-filled world, because I can't use that word light. It was so bright, so powerful, that it was beyond light. And I was in this world, and I saw a configuration like, I mean, folks, I was into this kind of thing for over a decade before I ever died, you know? But I'm seeing like two cyclones inverted over each other, like in an hourglass shape. And the cyclone, I call them cyclones, the cyclone on the top was really big at the top and came down to you know, kind of like a spout. The one on the bottom was very big on the bottom, came up to a spout, where the two spouts should have touched but did not, came out this incredible power. Don't know what else to call it, power. Just pulsating out of the middle. And they were spinning at great speed, but what confused me was they were kind of bulgy rather than smooth-sided. To me, spinning at such great speed, they should have been smooth-sided, but they were not. And each one had a tri-directional speed and spin in it. And I recognized myself sort of toward the top of the left, and superimposed over me was all of my past lives and all of my future lives happening in the same time, in the same place. And I recognize that there's no such thing as forward or backward or up or down or left or right. Those motions do not exist in the universe. My sense was I was at that center point of creation and consciousness, that those kind of things don't exist there. The only thing that exists there is expansion and contraction, as if the whole universe is breathing. And that was the only motion. And I saw the same thing reflected down below. I was up here, I was also down there, sort of like the idea of as above, so below. And I'll go a little bit further with this one. And I wanted to go to the middle. Because I felt that in the middle was the path to God, the passageway to God, and that's where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to live. I didn't want a body. Forget that stuff. I was through. So I wanted to go in the middle. And as I was doing that, I was able to witness how creation works, what creation is, and what consciousness is. And then a voice spoke. And I was used to guides and guardians and angels and all those kinds of voices. It wasn't that kind of voice. It was a voice so big. How do you describe that kind of voice? Big, 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 big. That voice filled the entire universe and all of creation. That's how big that voice was. And that voice said to me, and I quote, "Test revelation. You are to do the research, one book for each day." It did not name book 1. It did name books 2 and 3. Future memory is book 2. It showed me what all this meant and what was to be in each book. It did not tell me how to do the work or how long it would take me. And then I heard my son's voice. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, my son Kelly Huffman. Do any of you know anything about astrology here? He's a Taurus. 4 planets in Taurus. Super Taurus. He had just returned from a cruise school in the Atlantic. He borrowed a lot of money to go, thinking it would be an oceanography course. It turned out to be a glorified high school. He was kind of bitter and, confused and not a happy camper, but glad to be back home. And that night when this happened, he was at the Black Angus bar tossing a few with friends. Now, where else would a good tourist go but the Black Angus bar? You get the picture? He didn't tell me this till about a year later. And he had a beer mug sort of halfway up to his mouth, and he slammed it down, jumped up, said out loud to everybody there, "My mother's in trouble. I have to go home and help my mother." So he got, scurried out of the bar, got in my car, which he was using for the night, and sped home. And there my body was scattered, laid across a large chair. And you have to know how we raised our children to understand Kelly's response. We raised our children to never trust an authority, to get your own information yourself and test it, and always go within. Your initial response is always to go within for guidance before you do anything out here. So Kelly did what he was taught to do. Saw the body. First thing he did was go within. What's the guidance here? And the guidance was to sit opposite the body and start talking. It doesn't matter what you say, just keep talking. Well, we now know that the last faculty lost in death is the ability to hear. And what we now know also is, had he gone to a phone and called for help, they would have arrived too late to bring me back. So Kelly did exactly the perfect thing at the perfect time to do. He was talking. I heard him. Just when I was ready to go through the center, I heard my son. And I turned and I listened. And I didn't hear a son loving his mother. I heard one human being loving another human being because he wanted to, because that was his joy. He loved absolutely unconditionally. He was giving his all. Now, I knew that was possible on the other side. I did not know that was possible on planet Earth. So I came back by choice because I wanted to learn from my son how to love that way on Earth. So, and sort of a little sidebar to that. Again, most of these experiences come from violence or trauma. You have a body to rebuild. I had to relearn how to crawl, how to stand, how to climb, how to walk stairs. I had to relearn all of that. I had to relearn the difference between left and right, how to see properly, how to hear properly, and rebuild all my belief systems. And it was tough stuff. I steadily went downhill month after month. And the doctor became very concerned. People who knew me became very concerned. And it was the first part of November, and in Seattle, Washington, at the Seattle Center in Seattle, Washington, they were having the Mind Miraculous Symposium. It was put on by the Science of Mind Church, and they were having such speakers as Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Dr. Boo Joy, on and on and on. But the first speaker was Dr. William Tiller, the physicist from Stanford. So my doctor got up at 5:30 in the morning. Can you imagine a doctor getting up at 5:30 in the morning to give me a shot so I could go, and a lot of medication. And they took me up in a van, laid me out like a little baby, and by the time I got up there, I was reasonably human, and I could walk and talk like a human being. And went inside and really had a good seat inside. And William Tiller was the first speaker. His topic was the eternal now. And it was his thought, his feeling, and his belief that everything happened at the same time in the same space, and that he could chart that dynamic mathematically, that this in fact was the way of things in the universe. So I can't tell you anything about his talk. All I can say is at the end of his talk, he flashed up on the stage this gigantic, it was like a 5-story screen. I mean, it was a huge screen. And he flashed up on that screen what he felt the eternal now looked like. And it was 2 cyclones inverted over each other, and where the 2 spouts should have touched but did not was coming out this incredible power. And I jumped up from my seat, I went out into the foyer, I collapsed under a wall light, and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed, and saying out loud, I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy, he saw it too. I'm not crazy. And from that moment on, I got, well. You see, a lot of us really think we really think we're crazy. And even with my training beforehand, this was still overwhelming. So it was heavy for me.
Thank you very much.